The UK election is nearly upon us, and for opinion pollsters and for watchers of the pound, it's really been quite an interesting period. So what do previous elections tell us, and what can we expect about the pound's direction once voters have made their decision? With me to discuss this is Viraj Patel, currency strategist from ING. Viraj, it was a surprise when Theresa May called the election, and the election has turned out to be more of a surprise than she bargained for. The polls have really tightened, haven't they?
Well, exactly. So the tightening of the polls and really its doubts over the size of the Tory majority has really caused some stir in markets, and that's caused sterling to potentially suggest there's greater two-way risks here going into this election.
Let's see that first chart which reflects this. There you have a very steady Tory majority prediction for a long time. That looked like a one-way bet, really, didn't it? And then suddenly we have this sharpening or tightening in the polls, which brings sterling down as a result.
Exactly, and the pound is trading very cautiously going into this event. A lot of that is to do with, obviously, the tighter polls and also greater realisation that there are two-way risks. And that's the key message for investors, that the neutral positioning, stability in the pound, suggests that any election surprise could inject a bit of volatility.
Yes, and so how have investors positioned themselves? Let's have a look at our second chart. What does the positioning data tell us about how investors are prepared for the outcome?
Well, markets are a lot more neutral than they were since the snap election was called. So the snap election was the catalyst for markets to sort of close out their short positions on the pound, and that's kind of caused this neutrality in positioning. Now, the neutral positioning, again coinciding with the stability in the pound, suggests that there now can be two-way risks. So if we do get an election surprise in either direction, you'd expect the pound to move both ways. Previous
elections and last year's Brexit vote tell us what about the pound? Let's have a look at our third chart here. There is that dramatic drop in Brexit, as we can see. But in general, previous elections have done what to sterling?
I think the last-minute tightening of the polls suggests that there's greater parallels for this election as there were in the 2015 election. So when you've got sort of uncertainty, what you would expect for the pound is that its initial knee-jerk reaction now is a function of securing.
The 2015 election, that's the blue one at the top.
That's correct, yeah. So it's now a function of sort of securing political stability, the initial knee-jerk reaction. So we would expect that the passing of the event risk, political clarity, and under the status quo of, say, a Conservative majority, that would cause an initial, that would be modestly supportive for the pound.
And as our fourth chart show, we actually saw some of that in the US election and in the French election, didn't we? That's that kind of clarity you're talking about, the relief rally we can expect.
Exactly, and that's the playbook for sterling going into sort of this event. So it's the initial knee-jerk reaction will be literally a function of securing political clarity. As uncertainty fades, you'd expect the pound to get a modest boost. Now, we'd caveat that and say that, in actual fact, we think that for the pound to move much higher or meaningfully higher after the elections, we need Mrs May to at least extend her majority to 50. And realistically, it probably has to be closer to 100, as the polls initially at the outset had put.
I mean, the pound is about 129
Correct.
now. Her majority is 17. What would take it below 129 to 128?
That would be a decrease in the majority. Mm-hmm. And then there is that tail risk scenario that we have to consider that some polls and some model estimates are putting out there, which is a hung parliament. Now, come Friday morning, that would be the worst case for sterling markets, not necessarily because of any sort of policy-related stuff, but we know that the pound is its Achilles heel is political uncertainty. Yes. And in this sort of grey area of uncertainty where you get maybe 295 to 325 seats for the Tories, sure, that would be the worst case outcome.
Finally, Viraj, just throw us forward to this time next week, okay? Just tell us what you think is likely to be, what sterling is likely to be doing, what investors are likely to be thinking, once the dust has settled.
Well, once the dust has settled, it really is back to Brexit, really. And Brexit policies will be the main sort of driver for the pound going forward. And that could see sort of a moderation in any extreme move. So under, say, the status quo of a Conservative majority, you would expect potentially the focus to shift to maybe the cabinet reshuffle, transition deal talks, and it's unlikely that anything's going to really manifest in the first couple of weeks. So what you might see is a sort of a correction and a moderation in any sort of overshoot in the pound, back to sort of the 130 mark against the dollar.
Okay, all that fuss and nothing, and we'll still be at around 130. Viraj Patel of ING, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.